Young and the Restless spoilers. Full episodes Wednesday, the 25th of March 2026. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. The heavy silence in the Genoa City Athletic Club suite was suffocating thick with an unspoken tension that had been building for weeks. Chelsea Lawson stood near the entryway, her fingers nervously twisting the fabric of her coat as she watched Billy Abbott. He was silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows, a lowball glass of amber liquid clutched so tightly in his hand that his knuckles were stark white. Ever since the devastating blow of losing Chancellor Enterprises, a company he had fought tooth and nail to secure a legacy he believed was rightfully his, Billy had changed. The charming, albeit reckless man Chelsea cared for had been replaced by a brooding stranger consumed by shadows. Chelsea took a tentative step into the room, the soft thud of her heels sinking into the plush carpet. She had noticed the erratic behavior first, the missed calls, the secretive meetings at odd hours, the way his eyes would glaze over with a chilling hollow detachment when the name Newman was mentioned. This wasn't the usual Billy Abbott spiral. There were no casinos, no reckless benders. This was something colder, something calculated. Billy, Chelsea said softly, her voice barely rising above the low hum of the city traffic below. He didn't turn. He merely took a slow, deliberate sip of his drink. You're hovering, Chelsea. I told you I just needed some time to think. You've been thinking for weeks, she countered, closing the distance between them. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, feeling the rigid tension in his muscles. You're shutting me out. You're shutting everyone out. I know losing Chancellor to Victor was a massive hit, but this isolation isn't healthy. You're acting like a man preparing for a funeral. Billy finally turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made Chelsea's breath hitch. The sorrow she expected to find was entirely absent, replaced by a terrifying razor-sharp clarity. A hollow chuckle escaped his lips, devoid of any real amusement. Not a funeral, Chelsea, he murmured, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. A resurrection and a reckoning. Chelsea's stomach plummeted. What are you talking about, Billy? Please talk to me. What have you been doing? He stepped away from her, touch-pacing the length of the room with the rest. He thinks he can just snap his fingers, pull a few strings, and strip me of my legacy. He took Chancellor away from me, Chelsea. He humiliated me, expecting me to just tuck my tail between my legs and crawl back into the Abbott woodwork. But he underestimated me. He always underestimates me. Billy, it's business. Chelsea pleaded, though. She knew how hollow the words sounded. Victor is ruthless, yes, but you survived him before. You have to let this go before it consumes you. Let it go, Billy whirled around, slamming his glass down onto the mahogany side table with a force that threatened to shatter the crystal. He didn't just take a company, Chelsea. He tried to erase me, but I'm not going to let him win. Not this time. Chelsea backed up a step, her heart pounding against her ribs. What are you planning? Billy's gaze locked onto hers, a terrifying smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The Newman family is in chaos right now, he explained, his tone shifting to an eerie clinical calmness. Victor is so busy managing the infighting, the power struggles between his precious children that he's left his flanks completely exposed. He thinks he's invincible, but his empire is built on a foundation of glass, and I've found the cracks. I've been making alliances, moving capital, setting up shell corporations. I am going to dismantle Newman Enterprises piece by piece, and I'm going to use his own family's dysfunction to do it. When I'm finished, Victor won't just lose his company, he'll lose his legacy. I will leave him with nothing. The sheer magnitude of his confession hung in the air, suffocating Chelsea. She stared at the man standing before her, utterly shocked and horrified. This wasn't the Billy who made impulsive, self-destructive mistakes. This was a man who had meticulously constructed a guillotine, waiting for the perfect moment to drop the blade. He was silently nurturing a deep, dark resentment, letting it twist him into a genuine lethal threat. You can't do this, Chelsea whispered, her voice trembling. Billy, do you hear yourself? You're talking about going to war with Victor Newman. He will destroy you. If you strike at him and miss, or even if you hit him, he will retaliate with a vengeance that will wipe you off the map. I'm not going to miss, Billy replied coldly, adjusting his cuffs with an unsettling nonchalance. I want you to stay out of this, Chelsea. I'm telling you because I care about you and I don't want you caught in the crossfire. But this is happening. Victor's reign is over. As Billy turned back to the window, dismissing her, Chelsea felt a cold sweat break out across her skin. She realized with a sickening jolt of clarity that Billy wasn't just a threat to Victor, he was a threat to himself and to everyone connected to the Newman family. Fleeing the athletic club, Chelsea retreated to the quiet sanctuary of her own apartment, but there was no peace to be found. The walls felt like they were closing in on her as an agonizing inner conflict began to tear her apart. She paced the hardwood floor, her mind racing through a labyrinth of impossible choices. On one hand, she cared for Billy, deeply. They had shared a profound connection, a mutual understanding of brokenness and redemption. She wanted to protect him from the inevitable destruction that a war with Victor Newman would bring. If she kept his secret, she would be complicit in his vengeance, but perhaps she could find a way to talk him down to save his soul before the darkness swallowed him whole. But on the other hand, there was the Newman family. Chelsea's ties to the Newmans were complex, bloodbound, and inescapable. Adam, for all his flaws, was the father of her son Connor. Connor carried the Newman blood in his veins. If Billy launched a catastrophic attack on Victor's empire, the collateral damage would be astronomical. It would devastate Adam, destabilize Connor's future, and ignite a corporate and personal bloodbath that would tear Genoa City apart. Could she really stand by and watch Billy detonate a bomb under the Newman family? But if she went to Victor, she would be signing Billy's death warrant. Victor's retaliation would be swift, merciless, and absolute. Betraying Billy meant destroying any trust they had, essentially throwing him to the wolves to save the very man who had wronged him. The torment of the decision gnawed at her a relentless physical ache in her chest. She needed perspective. She needed someone who understood the gravity of the Newman orbit. The bell above the door of Crimson Lights chimed a cheerful sound that sharply contrasted with the heavy dread anchoring Chelsea's soul. The coffee house was bathed in the warm, inviting glow of pendant lights, the rich scent of roasted espresso beans and fresh pastries filling the air. Behind the counter, Sharon Rosales was methodically wiping down the espresso machine. Sharon looked up, her practiced, welcoming smile, faltering slightly as she took in Chelsea's pale, haunted expression. "Chelsea," Sharon asked quickly, stepping out from behind the counter and wiping her hands on her apron, "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need to talk to you," Chelsea managed to say, her voice barely a rasp. "Please, somewhere private." Sharon nodded immediately, guiding Chelsea to the secluded booth in the back corner of the patio, away from the prying ears of the morning regulars. She set a steaming mug of chamomile tea in front of Chelsea before sliding into the opposite seat. "What's going on? Is it Connor? Is it Adam?" "No, it's not them," Chelsea stammered, wrapping her trembling hands around the warm ceramic mug. She stared down at the golden liquid, carefully choosing her words, desperate to keep the details vague while seeking the guidance she so desperately needed. "Sharon, what do you do when someone you care about is walking right off a cliff and taking them down means hurting them to save someone else?" Sharon's brow furrowed, her perceptive eyes studying Chelsea's distressed face. With her degree in psychology and her decades of surviving the turbulent waters of Genoa City, Sharon was adept at reading between the lines. "This is about Billy, isn't it?" Sharon asked softly. When Chelsea flinched, confirming the suspicion, Sharon sighed, leaning forward. "Chelsea, Billy has been in a dark place since the Chancellor acquisition. We all know that. But if he is planning something reckless..." "It's more than reckless, Sharon," Chelsea interrupted, a desperate edge to her voice. "It's a suicide mission. He is so consumed by his hatred, by this need for revenge. He doesn't care who gets caught in the blast radius. I'm terrified. If I try to stop him by exposing what he's doing, I will ruin him. The person he's targeting, they won't show mercy. But if I stay silent, innocent people, my family, my son's legacy could be destroyed." Sharon's expression grew somber, the weight of her own past experiences with vengeance and Newman wrath casting a shadow over her features. "You're talking about..." Victor Sharon stated a statement of fact rather than a question. She reached across the table, gently covering Chelsea's trembling hands with her own. "Chelsea, listen to me. I know what it's like to try and protect a man from his own demons. I know what it's like to stand in the crossfire of a Newman war. But you have to understand something fundamental about revenge. It is a poison. It doesn't just kill the target, it rots the person holding the cup." Sharon paused, her gaze holding Chelsea's with unwavering intensity. "If Billy is truly plotting against Victor, he is playing with fire that will burn down the entire city. Victor does not lose gracefully. He annihilates. If you know something that could prevent this war, you have a responsibility to act. Not just for Victor's sake, but for Connor's. You have to protect your son's world. And in a twisted way, stopping Billy before he crosses the point of no return might be the only way to truly save his life, even if he hates you for it." Sharon's words echoed in Chelsea's mind like the tolling of a heavy bell, as she left Crimson Lights and walked aimlessly through Chancellor Park. The crisp afternoon air bit at her cheeks, but she barely felt the cold. The agonizing struggle that had paralyzed her all morning was slowly beginning to crystallize into a painful, inevitable resolve. She loved Billy. She mourned the pain he was in, the humiliation he had suffered at Victor's hands. But Sharon was right. Billy was blinded by a toxic, festering hatred. If he succeeded in exploiting the Newman family's vulnerabilities, the resulting collapse would spare no one. Adam would be dragged into the mud, Victoria would be devastated, and Connor's inheritance, his stability, and his family would be fractured beyond repair. She could not let Billy's vendetta destroy her son's family. She could not let his obsession turn him into a monster. After hours of grueling, tear-filled soul-searching, Chelsea made the hardest decision of her life. She had to put the safety and stability of the Newman family of her son's bloodline above her relationship with Billy. She had to betray the man she cared for to prevent a catastrophe. Wiping a stray tear from her cheek, Chelsea squared her shoulders, her eyes hardening with a resolute, tragic determination. She turned her steps away from the park, heading straight for the towering glass monolith of Newman Enterprises. The executive floor of Newman Enterprises was a fortress of silent, intimidating power. Chelsea stepped off the private elevator, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The sleek modern decor and the hushed tones of the executive assistants did nothing to calm her nerves. She approached the heavy double doors of the CEO's office, taking a deep, fortifying breath before pushing them open. Victor Newman sat behind his massive mahogany desk, a portrait of calculated dominance. He was reviewing a file, his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. At the sound of the doors opening, he looked up, his sharp, dark eyes locking onto Chelsea. There was no surprise in his gaze, only a cool, assessing curiosity. Chelsea Victor rumbled his deep, gravelly voice, commanding the space of the room. He slowly took off his glasses, folding them deliberately and placing them on the desk. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? I assume this isn't a social call? Chelsea stood before the desk, feeling incredibly small under the weight of his scrutiny. The aura of the man was suffocating. This was the man Billy wanted to destroy. Looking at Victor now, immutable and dangerous, Chelsea knew exactly how massive a risk she was taking. By revealing Billy's plot, she was not only painting a target on Billy's back, but she was also inserting herself into a high-stakes game of corporate warfare. If Victor doubted her motives, she could easily become collateral damage. No, Victor, it's not a social call, Chelsea said, forcing her voice to remain steady. She gripped the edge of one of the leather guest chairs to anchor herself. I'm here because there is something you need to know. Something that threatens everything you've built. Victor's posture didn't change, but his eyes narrowed imperceptibly, a predatory stillness washing over him. I have many enemies, Chelsea. Most of them are fools. What makes this threat any different? Because this one is operating from the inside out, Chelsea replied, her knuckles turning white, and because you created him. Victor leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers together. Speak plainly. I have no patience for riddles. Chelsea swallowed the lump of fear in her throat. It's Billy Abbott. A dismissive, almost amused scoff escaped Victor's lips. Billy Boy Abbott, please. The man is a perpetual disappointment. He lost Chancellor because he lacks the discipline to lead. He is licking his wounds at the bottom of a bottle, as he always does. That's exactly what he wants you to think. Chelsea fired back, her voice rising with urgent intensity. But you're wrong, Victor. Taking Chancellor away from him didn't break him this time. It mutated him. He isn't gambling or drinking himself to death. He is entirely sober, and he is entirely focused on one thing, destroying you. The faint amusement vanished from Victor's face, replaced by a cold, hard mask. He knows about the chaos in your family. Chelsea continued, the words spilling out of her now like a broken dam. He knows about the infighting, the vulnerabilities you've ignored while trying to manage your children. He has been quietly moving capital-building alliances and setting up shell corporations. He is weaponizing your family's dysfunction to dismantle Newman Enterprises. He doesn't just want Chancellor back, Victor. He wants to wipe your legacy off the face of the earth. Silence descended upon the office, heavy and suffocating. The revelation hung in the air, a shockwave that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the Newman Tower. Victor did not yell. He did not slam his fist on the desk. Instead, a terrifying, icy calm settled over him. He stared at Chelsea, processing the magnitude of her betrayal to Billy and the gravity of the intelligence she had just delivered. Victor stood up slowly, walking around the desk to stand before the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Genoa City. His empire. For the first time in a long time, Victor Newman realized he had miscalculated. In his arrogance, in his desire to crush Billy Abbott and reclaim Chancellor, he had not merely defeated an opponent, he had forged a new, deeply dangerous enemy. An enemy with nothing to lose, born from Victor's own ruthless actions. "You have taken a great risk coming to me with this," Chelsea Victor said quietly, his back still turned to her. The tone of his voice sent a shiver down her spine. The chessboard had been violently upended. The war had officially begun, not with a public declaration, but with a whispered betrayal. And as Victor turned his head, his profile sharp against the city skyline, Chelsea knew that Genoa City would never be the same. "Billy Boy thinks he can use my family against me," Victor murmured, a dark, lethal promise lacing his words. "He will find that the Newman family is never more united than when we are destroying a common enemy." The neon bleed of the Las Vegas Strip felt a million miles away from the suffocating shadows of the abandoned warehouse on the city's industrial edge. The desert heat had baked the concrete all day, leaving the cavernous room stiflingly hot and thick with the scent of dust and old motor oil. Adam Newman stood with his shoulders squared, his jaw clenched so tight, a muscle ticked rapidly beneath his cheek. Beside him, his half-brother Nick Newman shifted his weight, the gravel crunching beneath his heavy boots echoing like distant gunfire in the silence. "It's over, Matt." Nick's voice was a low, dangerous rumble laced with a tremor of pure adrenaline. "You've run out of places to hide. You're done coming after my son. You're done poisoning my family with your garbage. It ends tonight." Matt Clark backed up against a rusted steel pillar, a sneer twisting his features, though the nervous, erratic darting of his eyes betrayed his fragile bravado. "You Newmans think you can just march into Sin City and dictate terms. You're out of your jurisdiction, Nick." And you, Matt, spat his gaze, snapping to Adam with venomous contempt. "You think you're untouchable just because you're wearing a tailored suit again. You're still the same gutter trash you were when you called yourself Spider." Adam took a slow, measured step forward, the ice in his veins chilling his words. "Spider is dead, Matt, but the man standing in front of you is a hell of a lot more dangerous. Tell us who is backing your operation, tell us where the rest of the fentanyl is, and maybe I'll let you walk out of here with both your legs intact." Matt let out a hollow, barking laugh that bounced off the corrugated metal walls. "You think I'm the one you need to worry about. You've been away from Vegas too long, Spider. You forgot who really runs the table." Before Adam could process the cryptic warning, the heavy metal door at the far end of the warehouse groaned open, the rusted hinges screaming in protest. The sharp, rhythmic click of stiletto heels against the concrete floor sliced through the heavy tension. A silhouette emerged from the darkness, stepping into a pale shaft of moonlight. The figure resolved into the sharp, unforgiving features of a woman Adam had desperately hoped he would never see again. "Hello, Spider," Reza Thompson purred, her voice dripping with a toxic familiarity. "It's been a long time." Adam froze the air, suddenly turning to lead in his lungs. Riza, the undisputed queen of the Vegas underworld poker scene, the woman who had held his life, his money, and his secrets in her manicured hands when he was nothing but a lost amnesiac card shark. "Riza," Adam said, his voice dropping an octave dangerously even. "This doesn't concern you. Walk away." "Walk away," Riza's eyes flashed with a manic, unhinged intensity. She stepped fully into the light, and the dull, lethal gleam of a 9mm pistol in her right hand sent a jolt of pure ice down Nick's spine. She leveled the barrel squarely at Adam's chest, her grip tight. "You don't get to dismiss me, Adam. Not after what you did. Not after the mess you left me to clean up." Nick instinctively moved a half step in front of Adam, his protective instincts overriding his common sense. "Put the gun down. Whatever your beef is with him, we don't need to do this. We just want Matt." "Shut up, Nick." Riza snapped her finger, whitening on the trigger. "This is between me and Spider. He thinks he can just waltz back into my city, start shaking down my associates, and pretend the past is buried in the sand." "I don't know what Matt told you," Adam said, raising his hands in a slow, placating gesture, his mind racing to calculate the distance between them. "But I'm just here to protect my family. You and I, we had an understanding." An understanding, Riza's laugh was a sharp, broken sound that bordered on hysterical. "Is that what you call it? You think I forgot about the Martinez game? You think I forgot about the blood on that money, Adam? Tell him." She waved the gun frantically, the barrel tracing erratic circles in the air. "Tell your precious moral brother what you did. Tell him about the night you rigged the high roller table, took the cartel's cash, and left my brother to take the fall for your scam." Adam's breath hitched. The dark, deeply buried secret of his time as Spider, a desperate, reckless move that had resulted in a man's brutal death and forced Adam to flee the underground scene before Victor found him, was suddenly laid bare, raw, and bleeding in. The open air. Riza, please, Adam pleaded, his mask of control slipping. That wasn't how it happened. I didn't know they would kill him. I didn't know the cartel would go after your family. You knew exactly what you were doing, Riza, screamed, hot tears cutting through the heavy makeup on her cheeks, her grief transforming into a blinding rage. You used us, you used me, and now you're going to pay for it with your life. The warehouse air grew thick, suffocating. Nick looked at Adam, seeing the horrifying truth written in the sudden sickly pallor of his younger brother's face. But there was no time for judgment or recriminations. Nick saw the fatal shift in Riza's stance, the tightening of her jaw, the way her shoulder locked into place. She had made her peace with murder. She was going to fire. Riza, don't do this, Adam whispered, bracing himself for the impact. Shooting me won't bring him back. My life is already over, she shrieked. No, Nick roared. Without thinking, driven by a primal, unbreakable brotherly instinct that defied years of bitter rivalry and hatred, Nick lunged. He didn't aim to disarm her, he aimed for Adam, throwing his entire body weight against his brother, just as the deafening crack of the gunshot shattered the desert night. The muzzle flash illuminated the warehouse in a blinding, violent strobe of yellow and white. Adam hit the concrete hard, the breath knocked violently from his lungs as his shoulders slammed against the floor. For a split second, there was only the high-pitched ringing in his ears and the smell of burnt gunpowder. Then a heavy, lifeless weight collapsed on top of him. Nick Adam gasped, rolling over his hands, scrambling in the dark. Nick was sprawled on his back, his eyes wide with profound shock. A dark blooming stain was rapidly spreading across the left side of his chest, soaking through his shirt, black in the moonlight. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a wet, choked gasp escaped his lips before his eyes rolled back. Oh my God, Riza whispered. The gun slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering loudly against the concrete. The reality of what she had done crashed over her like a tidal wave. She hadn't hit Spider. She had shot a Newman. She had just brought the wrath of a billionaire dynasty down on her head. Help him, Adam screamed at her, his hands frantically pressing down on Nick's chest, the warm, slick blood pooling instantly between his fingers. But Riza was already backing away, her eyes wide with absolute terror. She turned and sprinted into the darkness, the frantic click of her heels fading into the night, leaving Adam entirely alone in the shadows with his dying brother. Nick, stay with me. Look at me, Adam begged, hot tears tearing at his eyes, the crushing, suffocating weight of absolute guilt bearing down on his soul. Don't you dare die on me, Nick breathed. This is my fault. Oh, God, it's all my fault. The wail of sirens soon fractured the Vegas night, the red and blue lights painting the warehouse walls in frantic strokes. Paramedics swarmed the scene, roughly shoving Adam aside as they descended on Nick. The metallic tang of blood hung heavily in the air. Adam stood paralyzed against the cold steel pillar, his hands stained crimson, watching in muted horror as they strapped a breathing mask over Nick's pale face and loaded his limp body onto a stretcher.